Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Higurashi When They Cry. It's your boy Karagol Gaming, and you know how we do things around here. As you can hear, the phone rang noisily downstairs. Generally, there were no calls from me, so I never really answered the phone much. But since my parents weren't here, I had no choice. I squirmed off the bed and went downstairs.
もしもし、前原です。
ケイチ、お母さんだけど。
I intuitively had a bad feeling about this. It was because I thought she was going to ask me to go out and buy some things. So I took the initiative.
何？別に俺、夕食はインスタントでもいいよ。まだいっぱいあったでしょ？
The other day we went out as a family and bought a whole case of cup noodles. I wanted to get a bunch of different kinds actually, but they refused since the individual packs were expensive. So instead, I got a whole case of the mega-sized pork and bone and ginger flavored ones that I liked. But my parents don't like strong flavors and didn't touch any of them, so the cupboards were still full of
だから
them.
さ、買い物に行く必要はないんじゃないの？
ケイチ、買い物のお願いじゃないの。お父さんとお母さんね、お仕事の関係で急遽東京に行かなくちゃならなくなったの。
え？今から？
This was really abrupt.
もう着いちゃってるの。
Well, how long are you gonna be there, fam?
お昼には出発してたからね。
It's quite a distance from Tokyo to Hinamizawa. Gunning at full speed down the highway would take about 6 hours. Dad has a license, but since he doesn't like the highway, they likely took the train. It would have taken longer.
ケイチもお父さんとお母さんの話を聞いてたからわかるかもしれないけど、お父さんのお仕事の契約がね、今ちょっとうまくいってないの。
Now that she mentioned it, I did remember that they talked about all that time about how his job prospects weren't looking so good.
お父さんはそういうのに繊細な人だから、このままだとお仕事にも影響が出ちゃうの。
Part of my father's particular fragile artistic personality, his emotions changed as easily as the fall sky. You could also just say he couldn't take criticism.
でも、そんなの電話でやり取りすればいいじゃないか。
ケイチ、お父さんのお仕事なんだから、とにかく電話よりも直接会って話した方が早いの。
Why did you have to go?
誤解もないし。
As their son, there was nothing more I could say once they started talking about work.
だから帰るのは明日の晩になっちゃうの。
Home alone against these crazy broads.
ケイチ、一人で大丈夫よね。
Nah, I told you, in case anything happens, and if I die, the fucking clock in my coffin, you understand me?
別に死にゃしないよ。
There you go again saying that shit.
ケイチ、死んじゃうなんて軽々しく言っちゃダメよ。心配事があったら相談してね。母さん、きっと相談に乗れると思うから。
Yesterday I did bring up if I died rather abruptly, so I suppose they were a little worried. But really, I was more depressed by the fact that nothing would be solved by telling them. I didn't plan on dying. At least not while I still knew nothing. I would never allow it.
死なないよ。俺は、あがいてでも生き延びる。
Eh?
そう。じゃあね。
It's like, yeah, okay, buddy.
明日の朝、ちゃんと起きるのよ。朝ごはんは食べてね。お風呂と歯磨きも忘れないのよ。
へいへい。そんじゃ。
The call ended like that. Sometimes my parents went off to Tokyo for business meetings, but Tokyo was far away. They normally did things by phone. The times they did go were normally planned out in advance. It never happened this suddenly. I couldn't say that those circumstances didn't feel strange or rather unnatural. Anyway, I needed only to recognize the reality of the situation. That tonight, I was the only one in the house. That when my parents came back from work, I would be gone, missing, vanished, transferred. Looking back on the series of events of the previous 5 years involving Oyashiro-sama's curse, it wouldn't seem strange at all. Come to think of it, it was getting pretty late. I didn't think it was good that the only light on in the whole house was from my room on the second floor. It was the same as broadcasting to the enemy that my parents were gone and this was their chance. First, I ran to the living room, flicked on the lights and turned the TV on to a reassuring volume. Next was the study. I similarly turned on the lights and some music. With this, from outside it would seem like my parents were still here. Once again, I went through the house checking to see if there was anything left unlocked. When I saw the veranda and laundry still hanging out there, I went pale. That would have made it too obvious. I needed to take it down. I snatched down the laundry haphazardly and erased all traces that my mother wasn't there. It should be fine now. Ah! The garage! They hadn't gone all the way to Tokyo by car, but they had gone up to Okonomiya Station. The garage was empty, wide open and in plain sight. This was not good. I panicked and rushed out the back to close the normally open garage door. It should be fine now. I needed to get the paper. Mom always got the paper. Since they left it in the afternoon, the evening paper was still out there. Come on, fam. You're actually losing your mind here. My premonition was correct. I pulled out everything from the mailbox and dropped it in the entryway. With this, for sure this time, it should be fine. Come to think of it, leaving the cupboard busted like that from my little freakout was kind of bad. I'll just say I tripped and fell and the bat I was holding smashed into it. Even so, just leaving it in its current state wasn't good. I should clean it up a little bit before Mom got back and scolded me. I remember that there was a broom and dustpan in the closet. As I was going to get them, the phone rang once again.
もしもし、前原です。
あら、圭一くん？お母様はいらっしゃいますかしら？
今ちょっといないんですけど。
You idiot, Keiichi Maibara. Don't reveal your parents are gone. You can follow up still. Calm down and take care of it. She's sleeping.
すぐに戻ると思います。
That wasn't a good response either. Now they might say they'll call again, or to tell her to call them when she comes back.
なら、結構です。大した話でもありませんから。では、失礼しますわね。
No worries. The scenario I feared didn't play out, eliciting a sigh of relief. That call was fortunate in more ways than one. I'll have to deal with any telephone calls coming in from my parents tonight. I was somehow able to deal with the phone call just now, but I couldn't continue to rely on such poor improvisation. I needed to make up a good story to explain that my parents were home, but couldn't answer the phone at the moment. They were making tempura and couldn't step away right now. That wasn't good enough. They were sick and went to bed because they weren't feeling well. Was that going to be safe enough? I was thinking about it on the way back. Just unplug your fucking phone, I guess. I don't know. Now they might be worried, show up at the door. Yeah, I didn't pay my fucking electricity bills or phone bills. What you gonna do, pay them for me? I was thinking about it on the way back to my room when the phone rang once again. It was like they were calling because they knew I was going to lie. I didn't want to pick up, but I knew I had to. They would suspect my parents weren't here. I should have just taken the phone off the hook from under the pretense that I didn't realize that it was. But since the phone rang, I had to pick it up. No, you don't. Just say you were in the shower or in the bathroom taking a shit. I prepared myself and lifted up the receiver.
もしもし。
I stopped announcing that this was the Maibara residence. I had no reason to be kind to someone I didn't know the identity of. But unlike my uncouth voice, the person on the other side sounded goofy and lighthearted.
どうも、夜分遅くに申し訳ありません。
Dude, I need 2 of your best men to be bodyguards for me until tomorrow night.
私、沖宮消防の大石と申しますが。
Or come get me out of town for a couple of days.
大石さんですか？
前原さんですか？こんばんは。お元気そうで何よりです。
ちょっと待ってくださいね。
Uh-oh. I grabbed the portable handset and rushed to my room with it. It was the same no matter where I was since there was no one else home, but I wanted to be in a spot that felt just a bit safer when speaking on the phone with Oishi-san.
お待たせしました。
いかがですか？その後お変わりは。
Since then, when was that exactly? There was something about the brazen way he talked that rubbed me the wrong way. The last time I spoke with Oishi-san was 2 days ago. The day I stayed home from school, I met Oishi-san on the way back from the hospital, and we headed into town for lunch and had a talk. Then after that, Rena and Mion came to check up on me. Whenever I spoke with Oishi-san, they always knew about it. It was like that since the first time I met him. Today's phone call may well be found out by them as well.
もしもし聞こえてますか前原さん。
あ、すみません。なんて言いました？
その後、何か変わったことはありませんかとお尋ねしたんです。お返事がないんで焦りましたよ。
特には。
The words stopped in my throat. There was a ton of stuff that happened. All of it baffling. What should I talk about? I didn't understand any of it, but I should try asking. If I didn't ask now, I may never have another chance. This night, when my parents weren't home, I had no guarantees that I would make it through the night safely after all.
大石さん、やっぱり俺、命を狙われているみたいです。
本当ですか？
偶然の可能性もあるんですが、先日俺が病気で休んだ日、夕方にあの二人がお見舞いに来たんです。
あの二人？
レナとミオンです。そしてそこで大石さんと一緒に昼飯を食ったことを正されました。
それで
お見舞いってことでおはぎを置いていったんですが、その中に針が入ってたんです。
Listen, what you do right here is you secure the vicinity so that no one else can hear you when you're talking in an indoor voice, like a whispering tone, right? Just make sure the area is secure and clear. And then you whisper to Oishi-san, saying exactly this. If something happens to me, check behind the clock in my room. Done.
偶然飲み込まずに済みましたが、これってやっぱり脅迫でしょうか？
その針は？
よく見かけるような普通の裁縫針のようでした。糸を通す穴が開いていて。
違いますよ、前原さん。針です。証拠になります。脅迫だと立証できるかもしれません。その針はありますか？
That's right, that's it! I dropped the receiver and rushed downstairs. When I tossed the mochi, I overlooked it out of terror, but that needle was a valuable piece of evidence. Let's see. I threw the mochi and the needle at the wall together. If it was there, then it would have been in the living room. But my prudent mother had cleaned that living room wall. What the fuck kind of layout do you guys have? How is this the living room? And there was not a trace of mochi left on it. Could it be that it dropped in the gap between the wall and the carpet? I frantically searched by running my palm along the carpet, but nothing turned up. I tried moving around the sofa and desks, pulling up the carpet and flapping it around, but I couldn't find the needle. Did my mom clean everything up without noticing it? It was just 2 days ago. I didn't know what day they collected the burnable trash, but it may still be in the trash bin in the kitchen. I rushed into the kitchen, opened up the lid of the pail, and poured out the contents. But even at a glance, I could tell that it would be incredibly difficult to find a needle in this pile of trash. I was looking for a needle in a trash stack. Got him. I know. I'll try running my hand through it. It was a bit gross, but I was looking for a needle. Listen. If the mochi is in there, then you have a good chance of finding the needle. You don't have to run your hand through the fucking thing and, like, risk getting stung. If I felt a small prick, I'll be able to find it. This guy right here. It was a pretty tactless method, but it was the quickest. I held my breath and started striking the pile with my hand. What the fuck? Filth flew about. Jesus Christ, this guy. There was nothing more disgusting than this, but it was not the time to be concerned about such details. I continued on for a while, but nothing turned up. I wanted to search more thoroughly, but I was still on the phone. I shouldn't keep Oishi-san waiting for too long. Later, when Mom got back, I'll have to ask her if there was a needle. I hastily began scribbling on the notepad affixed to the refrigerator with a magnet. Was there a needle? I scrawled out the words with a red pen. I then dashed back up the stairs, where I had been keeping Oishi-san waiting for far too long.
もしもし、どうでしたか？
見つかりません。あの時はつい気が動転していて。
そうですか。見つかればでいいんです。保管しておいてくださいね。
That's right. The needle wasn't the only incident. I had to tell him about this morning with the hit and run.
あと大石さん、それだけじゃないんです。実は今朝。
That van was definitely aiming for me. I could say without question due to the circumstances at the time.
その車のナンバープレートは見ましたか？こちらでも探してみます。
At the time, I just flipped out yelling at him, but I didn't look at the plate. What failures on my part with the needle and the plate number. I was just so focused on protecting myself that I let some of the most important details slip out of my grasp. I punched my pillow, annoyed at how worthless I was.
すみません。白いワゴン車ってこと以外はわかりません。
仕方ないことですよ、前原さん。惹かれかければ気も動転します。
やっぱりこれだって偶然じゃないですよね。
Oishi-san started to hem and haw over on the other end. I could imagine him folding his arms.
あと、レナの様子もやっぱり怪しいです。
それはどんな感じですか？
What Rena said on the way home today, asking why I was so much like Satoshi-kun. Now I could say it with confidence, that Rena knew what happened to Satoshi. She knew that there was more to it than him just simply disappearing or getting transferred.
レナは知っています。去年の鬼隠しにあったサトシのことを何か知っています。
それは具体的にどういうことですか？
レナが言うには、俺はサトシとそっくりらしいんです。このまま行くと、俺もサトシと同じ運命をたどると。
運命ですか？具体的にどんな運命をたどるか言及しましたか？
天候と。
天候？
レナは、サトシは転校したって言ってるんです。で、俺もこのままだと転校しちゃうぞって。
Oishi-san let out a stern sigh and then grumbled loudly.
前原さん、それはおそらく何かの脅迫、もしくは警告ですね。
Way to calm me down, dude.
俺もそう思ってます。
At that point, I started to think, finally! Would it be prudent to sum up that everything had happened up until now as the machinations of some human perpetrator? Other than the theory of it being Rena and the others, I was left with Oyashiro-sama's curse actually existing as the only explanation. Of course, I couldn't tell that to Oishi-san, except Rena's strange behavior could be proof of either scenarios. Whether it was Oyashiro-sama's curse being real or everything being a part of a conspiracy committed by all of the villagers, Rena was involved. Rena had to know something. Rena was suspicious. What exactly was Rena? I couldn't help but think that she was somehow involved with the prior string of mysterious deaths. Listen, if Rena is involved, then Mion is involved. I seem to recall that Oishi-san had admitted that he had dug into Rena's past a little. He was probably just downplaying it when he said a little. Meaning, he had actually dug pretty deep most likely. I wanted to hear about Rena. I wanted to know what happened at her previous school, among other things that were still unknown to me. If Rena was somebody I could suspect... No, not that. I wanted to know the truth. Well, you can't handle the truth. Tonight, I was alone in this huge house. Even though I said I couldn't count on them, I had lost the security I felt just by having my parents around. It wasn't like this house was some sort of fortress or castle. If a malicious person decided to use brute force, they would easily gain entry. There were no other residents close to the Maibara residence. No one would be able to hear anything, no matter how loud it was. Fam, this is when you call a cab. Just round up whatever money you have, check into a hotel, motel, whatever. I'll tell Oishi-san to come pick you up. I had never felt as much resentment towards my father's artistic temperament and the fact that he had this house built in such a remote location as I did right now. Fuck that shit. I wondered if I would still be here by tomorrow morning, so I had to ask, right now, because I had no idea when the next chance would come.
大石さん、聞きたいことがあるんです。隠さないでくださいね。
何でも聞いてください。
Even though he was so far away on the other end of the line, this was the most reliable he had ever felt. I wanted to ask about Rena, about what happened at her previous school.
実は、レナの。
No, they're already in the house. I noticed the sound that had been going on for a while now. Since I was so focused on the call, I hadn't paid attention to it at first. But I finally realized it was the doorbell. The time was 7 o'clock. It was past the time the postman would be making a delivery, and past any sensible time for a neighbor to be visiting. I considered just acting like nobody was home, but that wouldn't be good. That would ruin all the work I put in making it look like my parents were home. I need to answer the door.
もしもし、前原さん？
I am in grave danger. Come here as soon as you can.
すみません。誰か来たみたいですので。
お客さんですか。すみません、すみません。
Unexpected guest, mind you.
今夜のお電話はこれくらいにしましょうか。
That would be a problem.
いえ、すぐ戻りますから。電話はこのままでいいですか？
はいはい、構いませんよ。
I dropped the handset on my bed and dashed down to the door. Good, this is evidence. Whoever it was, get them to your room. I needed to make a good excuse to get them to leave. I had a hunch it was the lady who called right before Oishi-san did. In which case, it would be one of the neighbors who is friends with my mom. I'll just say mom isn't feeling well and went to bed early. That would be the easiest option. Just look through the fucking hole to see who it is. Do not unlock the door. It would be hard for her to ask me to wake my mom up if she's not feeling well. The bell continued to ring at regular intervals. If someone didn't answer after you rang the bell so much, you would normally give up and go home, wouldn't you? Without removing the chain, I opened the door slightly and peered out at the visitor. A chill ran down my spine. I knew it. Somewhere deep inside, I had prepared for this moment. I had tried to escape by imagining it was the easiest person to deal with, one of my mom's friends.
こんばんは。
Are you fucking insane, lass? After what transpired after school? If I'm crazy, you're crazier.
レナ。
There shouldn't be any reason for Rena to come over at this hour. The timing also made me feel uneasy, because it was just as I was about to ask Oishi-san about Rena. I wish I could have chalked this up to a mere coincidence. But those unsettling words from Mion several days ago echoed back to me.
さーてね。おじさんにわからないことはないからね。
レナ一人。
Did you go out, you fucking idiot? You deserve to die? It seems that Mion wasn't with her. But that didn't change the situation at all.
何しに来たんだよ。
ねえ、ケイチ君。ちゃんとドアを開けてお話ししたいな。
Nope, we're talking right now.
レナは玄関に入っちゃダメなのかな
It was true that speaking through a chain door wasn't the right way to talk to a classmate. What? But
うち、夜は必ずチェーンかけてるんだよ。気にすんなよ。
なら、仕方ないかな。
Rena looked at the ground sadly. But she kept on smiling at least, and her effort to keep that smile was quite pitiful. Even though she was tugging at my heartstrings, I didn't lower my guard. Say what you want to say and then leave. As long as I stayed like this, even if it made my heart ache, my life wasn't in danger. What I really feared, more than the possibility that hoodlums would assault me if I removed the chain, was trusting Rena enough to remove the chain and having my friendship betrayed. As long as the chain wasn't unlatched, even if it made my heart ache, I wouldn't have to deal with being betrayed by Rena. Since it didn't seem like I would remove the chain from her silent urging, she appeared to give up on trying to get into the entranceway.
あのさ、ケイチくん。ご飯食べた？
No, I haven't eaten. Since my mom wasn't there, dinner wouldn't be ready no matter how long I waited. The worst scenario right now would be if our mom called Rena, saying that they would be away, and making sure or requesting that Rena come over and keep an eye on us. That would be the worst case scenario. I laid down when I got home, was woken up by the phone, and didn't have a chance to eat since I used up all that time talking. I was going to have cup noodles in any case. I could just eat one whenever I wanted
いや
to.
まだだよ。それがどうしたよ。
じゃあよかった。これ見て。お惣菜とか持ってきてあげたの。
Nope. Rena held out a stack of boxes wrapped in a cloth.
お台所とか貸してくれれば、お味噌汁も温めてあげられるよ。
Go the fuck home.
いいよ、そこまでしてくれなくても。
でも、お豆腐もお野菜もたっぷりなの。ケイチくん、そういうの嫌いかな？
There's no way I wouldn't like that. I love miso soup with lots of ingredients. White radish, carrots, burdock root, potatoes, dense and fibrous root vegetables. Yeah, that miso soup looks incredible.
ご飯も持ってきてあげたから、レンジで温めればすぐ食べられるし。
Without a doubt, rice needs miso soup. What is wrong with you, my G? Stuffing rice down your gullet, sipping miso soup in between ravenous bites? Ah, yeah. How wonderful it is to be born Japanese.
それからね、またお漬物を作ってきたんだよ。今度は山菜のお漬物なの。
Before I had moved here to Hinamizawa, I scoffed at the mountain vegetables called sansai. But I was captivated by their charm for the first time I tried them. Such a deep yet light flavor. Those so-called supermarket vegetables taste rough and overpowering in comparison. If you had to describe them, then they were the vegetables for the uninitiated. To become an expert such as myself, you first had to partake of sansai. It was common knowledge around here that Ryugu family's traditional pickles were wonderfully delicious. No matter what kind of pickles they were, they would go so well with that fluffy white rice.
それからね。
But wait, there is more. So delicious. It just seems so delicious. Farewell to my unhealthy self who said he would make do with cup noodles. Rena appeared to be in good spirits and she was offering such a delicious sounding dinner. The stress evaporated from my gut and hunger reared its voracious head. At the same time, my wariness of Rena suddenly dwindled. Rena did say she was alone. It shouldn't be a problem letting her inside. Though the possibility that it was laced with poison still hadn't been ruled out. At that moment, a cold chill ran down my spine once again. I couldn't understand why such a sensation had occurred just then, but the voice inside me was sounding the alarm. This happy Rena speaking of this charming dinner was dependent on one premise, and that premise was that tonight, dinner hadn't been made at my house, meaning it was under the assumption that my mom, who should be making it, wasn't here. At any normal household, 7 o'clock would be around the middle of dinner time. If my mom were here, we would be eating dinner around this time as well. The fact that she brought over all the makings of a meal at this time was inherently strange. Unless she knew. Rena, did she? Did she know that my parents weren't home? But there was also the chance that this was a bluff. I had turned on the lights and a bunch of other stuff to make it seem like my parents were here. There was a chance that Rena was unsure if my parents were home. But I had to wonder. Listen, motherfucker, all you had to do was just to say yes, I had eaten, and you wouldn't be in this predicament. the laundry, the garage, the evening paper. There were plenty of signs of them being hastily tidied up. It's hard to say that Rena didn't have the chance to determine if my parents were here or not, but there was no reason for me to confess that right now. I should try holding on to that fact as long as I could. First of all, the chain was still latched. As long as I didn't take it off, Rena wouldn't be able to do anything to me.
ありがたいんだけどさ、もう少しで夕飯ができるみたいなんだよ。
Nice save.
そうなの？そうなの？
That is so.
せっかくで申し訳ないんだけどさ、
Unable to think of a good way to refuse, my words trailed off weakly.
でも、ちょっとはおかずになると思うな。
No!
悪いけど間に合ってるよ。うちのおふくろってさ、結構おかずをいっぱい作るんだよ。だから。
おかずあるの？
With a smile that bordered on a cringe, I dodged her questions apologetically. But the feeling I tried to ignore began creeping up on my back again. I spoke as if my mom was setting down dinner right now, but it didn't mesh well with what Rena was saying. Rena was talking as if she was aware of some obvious fact, and that I was aware of it as well.
ケイチ君もおかずとか作れるんだね。何を作ったのかな？
いや、別に俺が。
Rena had assumed out of nowhere that I was the one who made the dishes. No, not so much that I made them, but rather that my mom hadn't.
本当に作ったの？おかず。ケイチ君が？
Shut up!
だから、俺が作ったんじゃないよ。おふくろが作った。いや、作ってるんだよ、今。だからさ、悪いけど、レナの持ってきてくれたのは食べられないんだよ。
Rena fell silent at that moment. At that moment, I felt that the light had suddenly disappeared from her eyes.
ケイチ君のお夕飯、当ててみようか？
Oh, for fuck's sake!
なんだっていいじゃないか。
ね。
The conversation might appear natural at first glance, but Rena was firmly in control. It felt like I was being interrogated.
そのお夕飯、お湯だけで作れるんじゃないかな。
Close the door.
おいおい、侮るなよ。うちのおふくろのスペシャルなディナーを見くびるなってんだ。そりゃもう、満願全席状態ですごいのなんの。
I tried my best to put on a strong front, but I couldn't grit my teeth quite right. So instead, I looked like someone who was borderline hysterical. But Rena showed no reaction whatsoever, even to that silliness.
ケイチ君、本当にお母さん、ご飯作ってってくれたの？
いや、だから、くれたんじゃなくて、今作ってるんだよ。もうすぐ晩飯に。
Rena had taken that assertion of mine that my mother was home and making dinner right now and completely ignoring it. I could tell that the more I panicked, the colder Rena became.
ねえ、ケイチ君。
At that moment, an uncomfortable chill crept up from the gap in the doorway.
お母さん、お家にいるのかな？かな。
Fuck me, she's annoying, mate. I couldn't keep up this charade anymore. Rena. She knew full well that my parents weren't home. But I had come too far to admit that now. Anyway, my parents were here and we would be having dinner soon. That was the situation I had concocted. So I answered. I told her she was here.
いるよ。もちろん。
I could feel the humidity drying out from the surrounding air. Rena's eyes were becoming even more frigid, piercing me with their... Gelid? Gelid glare? No, gelid.
どうして？
Nope! Close the door, close the door, close the door.
何のことかな？
Close the door. I tried acting casual, but that facade was torn off me the instant I looked into Rena's eyes. That look, it informed me that Rena's response was faster than she could open her mouth.
どうしてさっきから嘘をつくのかな
Fuck off!
嘘なんか。
嘘だよね。
Poke her eye with your finger.
嘘なんかじゃ。
嘘だよ
Shut up! Rena's outburst sent a jolt surging through my body. Rena and I were still separated by what few inches that slightly ajar, but still chained door could afford. But despite that, I was still being cornered. My house, which I had considered a safe haven until now, had become more like a dark alleyway where no one could save me.
圭一くんのお夕飯当てるよ
Leave me alone!
ね
Listen. This is when you scream on top of your lungs, hope that Oishi-san is still on the line, and just notify him that something is not right. I knew now that Rena had already known that my parents would not be here tonight, but it was still so strange that it had come to this. If she somehow knew that my parents weren't home, there was no way she should be able to guess what I would be eating tonight. But Rena said she would guess. How could she guess it? How could she know
カ
it
ッ
was...
プラーメン当たりでしょ
She's reading my mind. That I was going to eat. Wait, the cooking repertoire of a man who can't do housework is probably nothing but cup noodles after all. Looking at this statistically, it was the most probable answer. That didn't mean she was guessing.
ラーメンだけじゃきっとお腹すくと思うなご飯とかも一緒の方がきっと腹持ちいいと思うよ
Calm down, Keiichi Maibara. This was just a coincidence. Rena was just reading certain tells of mine. So the fact that she was inferring what I was thinking alarmed me. But it wasn't as if she was actually reading my mind. If it was being read, then she was a demon. No, not a demon. Things like that, they couldn't possibly exist.
好きなの
ラーメンがかよ。
豚骨生姜味
What? Oh, I wish I knew Japanese right about now. Rena indicated that the point my answer was addressing was wrong. Her rebuttal was so short that I momentarily didn't understand the words Rena had spoken.
ごめん、レナ。今、なんて。
え何が
今さ、何が好きって聞いたんだよ。
It wasn't long before I regretted how carelessly I had pushed forward with that question. It was such a simple answer, that's why I wasn't able to comprehend it.
豚骨生姜味
The fuck? I wondered how I appeared in the moments my mind went completely blank until the moment I was able to recover. As my field of vision began to distort, slowly swirling in a counterclockwise direction, I lost all sense of balance.
なんでそこまでわかるんだよ
I didn't even deny it. That was the type of frenzied state I was in. How could Rena even know this? Not even caring as I mashed my head against the door, I fixated my gaze on Rena. But she didn't even flinch when she saw me do that.
確かに勝った。まとめて勝った。俺が箱買いした。それがどうしてわかるんだ
なんでかな不思議だね。だね。
How could you dodge the question at a time like this? The chain and the door suddenly were no longer protecting me.
どうしてわかるなぜ知ってる答えろ
買ったのはセブンスマートだよね。
A shiver ran up my spine. I tried covering it up with an angry facade.
だからなんでわかるんだよ
圭一くんの後ろずっとくっついてたから。
何を言ってんだよ
Crazy bitch? I couldn't understand what she was saying. She had been following me all this
だか
time.
らレナが圭一くんの後ろにずっとくっついてたの。
Like that night? That night I was absorbed in my phone conversation with Oishi-san. I didn't even sense her being there, standing behind the door, behind me, standing there just like that.
圭一くんがいろんなラーメン選んでるとこ、後ろからずっと見てたの。
Why?
いろんな種類を選んでたんだよね。それでお母さんに怒られたの。高いラーメンばっかり選ぶから、一種類にしなさいって。それで圭一くん、大好きな大きいカップの豚骨生姜味を選んだんだよね。レナも好きだよ。豚骨ラーメン。でも、大きいカップは全部食べきれないけどね。
My brain was paralyzed, dulling my senses. It might have been a defense mechanism to diminish the fear I was feeling to non-traumatizing levels. With the fear being diminished, the fog enveloping my mind was cleared away. Then, I could understand what Rena was saying and started to put meaning behind her words. Even so, my fear hadn't subsided completely. It was like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, eyes closed so I didn't have to look down. It didn't actually solve any of the basic problems. I slowly took a step backwards. As I withdrew, Rena advanced.
だから圭一くん、ここを開けて。
No,
レナと一緒にご飯食べよう。
I don't wanna.
きっと美味しいから。ね。
Fuck off. Rena's pale, slender fingers squirmed through the crack in the door, one at a time, as if they had a mind of their own, rattling the chain. If she had unlatched the chain from the door, a feeling of terror would have just exploded within me. But Rena didn't do that. She was simply imploring me to remove the chain. I tried my hardest to light the fuse to the powder keg in my heart, trying again and again. Clatter, clatter. But it doesn't light. It doesn't
開
light!
けて、圭一くん。
帰ってくれ。頼むから。帰ってくれ。
Finally.
どうしてそんな意地悪を言うのかな。
帰ってくれ。帰れよ。帰れ。
The powder keg inside me finally went off. No smoldering, it just exploded. I tackled the door. Why would you do that? The force through the door had knocked Rena momentarily off balance. I couldn't hesitate here. Okay. I grabbed onto the doorknob with both hands, planted my feet firmly, and pulled with all my might. But that slamming sound I so desired did not happen. I could feel a tiny, disturbing bit of resistance keeping the door from closing. And the source of that was Rena's fingers. Each of those fingers wriggling, squirming around like the tendrils of a carnivorous plant through the crack in the doorway.
痛いよ、圭一くん。
It's finna hurt a bunch more, bitch. It wasn't a harsh shriek, but more of a yelp she was trying to keep back. I kept on pulling the door with all my might. I didn't even realize that if I didn't loosen my pull on the door at least momentarily, Rena wouldn't be able to pull her fingers out, and that was why the door wasn't closing.
本当に痛いの、圭一くん。
Break them off.
悪ふざけが過ぎたなら謝るよ。
I didn't care one bit for her apology. No matter how much she apologized, it didn't change any of what she had done up until now. It didn't change anything.
痛いの。痛いの。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。
Rena couldn't leave even if she wanted to because I had trapped her fingers. Rena's white fingers had become so deep red they were no longer even squirming.
ごめんなさい。
Nah, fuck that. You hold that position.
ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。
Rena's apologies were occasionally twisted with pain, but like a broken record, she was intent on repeating it over and over. Yo, Oishi-san must have heard this. I pulled in the door even harder. Finally, Rena's fingers were somehow able to slip out from the imprisonment in the doorway. Good. The moment that happened, the door closed silently and I could hear the thud of Rena falling on her butt on the other side. I locked the door immediately, my man. It made a loud clunk, voicing my rejection to Rena. Nope. Rena leaned against the door, apologizing profusely and nothing else. After confirming that I was sufficiently sealed off from her, I trudged away from the entryway. On the other side, I could still hear Rena echoing her apology. I'm sorry. Those pitiful words. They would be forever seeking my forgiveness. I didn't feel bad about this at all. But that wasn't out of any sort of malice. I felt a sort of hazy sense of relief that I was able to escape from Rena. Before, Mion had threatened me at this doorway, saying there was nothing she didn't know of. And just now, at the same place, Rena told me the same thing. My feeble attempts to disguise the fact that my parents weren't home had served no purpose from the start. I should have just pretended to be out and not even opened the door. What you should have done was to be fucking looking from that fucking hole to see who it was. My meager plans hadn't helped at all. In Hinamizawa, it was impossible to outwit them. Even though I was on the other side of the door, I wanted to get as far away from Rena as possible. 1 step, 2 steps. With each one, her sniveling apologies became more and more distant. I sprinted up the stairs and dove into my room. As you would expect, I was finally no longer able to hear Rena repeating her endless apology. Diving into my bed, I was startled by the hard lump I felt. There was something in my bed? You actual idiot. I finally remembered. I was in the middle of a call with Oishi-san. Looking at the clock, apparently not much time had passed since I went downstairs. Could it be that my clock had run out of batteries? I had talked with Rena for so long. How did almost no time pass? But the hand on the clock was ticking forward 1 second every second as usual. As I put the still warm receiver to my ear, time, which felt frozen, began moving once again.
もしもし、大石さん、お待たせしてすみませんでした。
いえいえ、大してお待ちしていませんよ。
Really? It became apparent that the amount of time that had passed between myself and Oishi-san was different. Over the phone, I could hear an energetic voice from a sports program or something. It drove home just how far away Oishi-san really was.
今、レナが来ました。
遊びに来たんですか？
Are you fucked in the head, mate? At 7 o'clock? I wasn't confident that I could coherently explain the situation to Oishi-san. But I didn't need to right now. Right now, I needed to know about Rena. That's right. I was planning to ask Oishi-san more about Rena, but Rena's little visit had interrupted the conversation. Ask him to come pick you up. That's it. Then you can ask all about Rena as the evening unfolds. What was true and what was false, I couldn't tell. The one thing I knew was the single grim reality that Rena was suspicious. I might be able to figure something out if I asked Oishi-san about her. Up until now, I had regretted it whenever I forced myself to ask about things that I was better off not knowing. But looking at it that way, you could say I hit rock bottom. There was no possible way I could feel any more regret than I did right now. No, rather, I wanted to know if there was anything beyond this I would regret more. Forget about tomorrow. It wasn't out of the realm of possibility for something to happen tonight. I wanted to know everything I could. I was absolutely not going to die like this. Not without knowing anything. I definitely will not.
竜宮レナさんのことですか？調べましたよ。まあ簡単には。
I understood that Oishi-san was talking in circles. A bit meant, I dug so deep, it would be hard to discuss this with you since you're her friend.
その簡単な全てを知りたいんです。
あなたが聞いて面白いような話はありませんよ。
大石さん。
I spoke as calmly as possible to Oishi-san, who was continuing to avoid the issue. And then I said it.
竜宮レナは怪しいと思っています。過去の事件がたとえお社様のたたりによるものだったにせよ、竜宮レナは関わっています。
レナさんが怪しいと思える具体的な証拠があるのですか？
The manner in which Oishi-san spoke became very firm. Do you have some sort of proof? That was him talking as a detective.
状況証拠だけです。
そうですか。
I could tell even over the phone how disappointed Oishi-san was, pulling on the fishing line when he felt a bite, only to reel in the bait. Disappointed, but ready to cast the line once more. That's how it seemed.
大石さん、目に見える証拠がなければ動けないんですか？
What I meant was, you can't come and save me without proof. I stuck that barb in there. As Oishi-san loved roundabout ways of saying things, he understood me just fine.
大丈夫ですよ。あなたは私が守ります。
That was not the least bit reassuring. Oishi-san was just using me to continue his investigation. I was going to get killed, and my corpse would be an important piece of evidence. That's all I was to him.
大石さんの捜査は俺の生死と無関係でしょうが、俺は死ねば終わりなんです。
Oishi-san went silent on the other end of the line. That may have been too blunt, but I didn't care. All I needed to relay to Oishi-san was that I was currently in a very dangerous position.
だから話してください、レナのこと。サトシは転校しました。多分俺もそれほど遠くない将来レナの言う転校をするでしょう。ですが大石さんには俺の死体を見つけることもできないでしょうね。現にサトシの死体だってまだ見つけられてない。
前原さん、どうか落ち着いて。
I was already suppressing my agitation even without Oishi-san having to tell me. It wouldn't solve anything if I continued to scream about my mistrust in the police. It would seem that I could only depend on myself and the bat Satoshi left behind to protect myself. Then, I at least wanted to know about what happened before Rena transferred schools.
つまらない話になるのは覚悟の上ですね。
Oishi-san, realizing my resolve couldn't be swayed, finally caved.
今の俺にとってつまらない話は何一つありません。お願いします。
まずいくつかお断りすることがあります。
はい。
他言無用でお願いします。また内容には一部憶測も含まれているかもしれません。すべてが真実ではないかもしれないということです。よろしいですね。
真実ではないかもしれない。言ってる意味がよくわかりません。
Hinamizawaの連続開始事件は捜査本部がありません。毎年の事件は個々に扱われています。ですから竜宮レナが捜査線に浮上したことは一度もないのです。つまりですね、
レナの調査は警察としてでなく個人として行ったということですか？
ご理解いただけて助かります。話のほとんどは電話もしくは会って聞かせてもらったものばかりです。ですから裏が取れていません。鵜呑みにしないでほしいということなんですよ。ご理解いただけますね。
We do.
全部聞いた話だけなんですか？
申し訳ないです。個人調査ですのでね。
あれ、以前レナのカルテを見たって言いませんでしたか？確かにそう聞きましたよ。
Oishi-san paused for a moment on the other end of the line.
そんなことも言いましたかね。
Rena's chart.
気のせいということにしてください。
I didn't care about Oishi-san having certain obligations and responsibilities. I also didn't care if there was no proof. Even if they were just rumors, there was no smoke without fire after all.
話してください、大石さん。
わかりました。
Oishi-san finally opened those tight lips of his. It seemed that Rena lived in Hinamizawa a long time ago. She had moved to Ibaraki Prefecture just before starting elementary school. Then following that, right after transferring, the unfortunate incident with the break-in of the school windows happened. Then Rena confided to the doctor. It was Oyashiro-sama. This was everything I knew.
私が知る話も前原さんと大きくは変わりません。
では、どこを詳しく調べたんですか？
I didn't need to ask. It was the incident right before she transferred back to
レ
Hinamizawa.
ナが起こした事件と、その後の医者での告白ですね。
はい。
大石さんは、その内容を知っているからこそ、レナたちを疑っているんですね。
ええ、疑っています。
やはり、レナたちが犯人。
ああ、いえ、疑うとはそういう意味ではないんです。
Oishi-san was the type of person to say things with confidence, but these particular words were less than reassuring.
じゃあ、何を疑ってるんですか？
親代様ですよ。
え？
親代様のたたりって本当にあるのかななんてまあ。
What the fuck? Oishi-san's laugh was quite dry, certainly not the kind that would make you want to join in. Oishi-san resumed the conversation about the dubious circumstances behind Satoshi's disappearance, the course of events leading him to delve into Rena's past. Just then, there was thunder in the distance, and a heavy rain started pouring down. It came without warning, a downpour fiercely beating the ground. I had left the window in my room open a crack to let the heat out. The violent wind danced into my room, making the curtains flap
どう
wildly.
しました？
あ、いえ、急にすごい雨が。すみません。どうぞ続けてください。
I got up while still on the phone and grasped the window.
はじめに事件と申し上げましたが、学校側も被害者も告発していないので、正式には事件ではないのです。
Imagine if I accidentally touch Rena now.
でですね、この辺りがどうも関係者皆さん口が重いんですよ。被害者の一人は片目に後遺症を残すぐらい殴られているのにもかかわらずです。学校側か、もしくは表沙汰になるのを望まない何者かがいろいろまたカウンセリングを担当した神経科医も職業倫理に厳格な方で。もしもし、前原さん、聞こえてます？
There was the figure of a person standing by the light near the mailbox this whole time. Even in this torrential rain, they didn't have an umbrella. They were unquestionably drenched from head to toe. In this shower, which more resembled a waterfall, droplets of water dripped down from her hair. Just standing there, both arms dangling at her side. In one hand was the stack of boxes, wrapped in cloth. Her eyes focused on my room. Jesus Christ, that is terrifying. Focused on me as I was about to close the window. Her mouth was methodically repeating a chewing motion. It was as if she had something hard to chew in her mouth, with her cheeks puffing out. What could she be eating over there? How could it be that at this time, I was more enthralled by Rena, instead of shocking developments being brought to light by Oishi-san? If it hadn't started raining, I wouldn't have gone to the window. Then I wouldn't have noticed Rena, nor would I have noticed that. Rena's mouth was moving in the same pattern. She wasn't eating something, she was repeating something. What was it? What was she repeating to me? What was she saying? And why was I right up against the window, fixated on
もし
her?
もし、前原さん、聞こえてますか？もしもーし。
ごめんなさい。
前原さん、
ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。
You're getting
ごめんなさい。
hypnotized.
ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。
You're getting hypnotized, man.
もしもし、前原さん、どうしましたか？
Even in this torrential downpour, Rena was still apologizing. The other self inside me drew the curtain hastily with my right hand, blocking my view of the outside. But even doing that, Rena's relentless apologies still reached my ears. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If I forgive you for this, will you forgive me for that? Please stop. Please stop. Please stop. Please stop. I'm sorry. 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 Damn it! Why should I have to forgive her? I'm the one who wants to be forgiven. For what? What part of me can't you forgive? I won't be killed. If you won't forgive me, then I won't forgive you either. I won't forgive. Won't forgive. Won't forgive. Won't forgive. Won't forgive. Won't forgive. Fuck me sideways. Stop repeating shit.
聞こえてるなら返事をしてください。もしもーし。
よく映画などに登場しますが、簡単に言うとどのようなものでしょうか？
複数の人格を持つことによる逃避と考えられています。
多重人格は逃避の一つなのですか？
さようです。そのメカニズムは完全には解明されていませんが、精神を守るために脳が行う防御行動の一つではないかと
例えば貧乏な人がお金持ちになった自分を想像するという現実逃避ってありますよね。
極論はできませんが、講義的にはそう解釈できます。つまり誰にでもあり得る現象なのです。
その現実逃避の見境がなくなると二重人格になるのですか？
ちょっと難しいですね。そう提唱する説もありますし、否定する説もあります。諸説紛々です。
では精神医学の世界ではまだ多重人格というのは未知の解明されていない現象なん。
残念ながらそうなります。今後の研究が期待されます。
でも二重人格なんてなんだかかっこいいですよね。どういう人が二重人格になれるんですか？
なれると言いますか、なりやすいと言いますか。最近の研究では遺伝と死因が複雑に絡み合い、中でも幼少期の育児体験が。
そういえばこの A 君も家庭に問題を抱えてるんですよね。7つの人格を持つ青年 A。 では VTR の続きをどうぞ。ですがその前にコマーシャル。
What the actual fuck? The 7th Mart was a bargain supermarket with food and alcohol. What's this, Keiichi? So many. There is no reason to get all different kinds, is there? I flopped all different colored cup noodle bowls into the cart.
最近のカップ麺は凝ってて種類も多いんだよ。どれも一通りは食ってみたいし。
I knew it was pretty selfish of me, but I thought I would at least give it a try. Keiichi, buy them in a big case, it's cheaper. Dad faltered. Well, I had a feeling it would end up like this. Now that Dad had thrown his hat into the ring, I had to compromise.
それじゃあ一種類しか食えないよ。飽きちゃうって。
I was resisting as a formality. I had already given up inside and wasn't sure which case of noodles to get. If you can't pick, then Mommy will pick for you. You don't have to rush me. I quickly searched the cases of noodles for what I want. Pork bone and ginger. Large cup? Hey Keiichi, can't you get a normal one? If I let Mom pick, she would err on the side of safety and get soy sauce or salt flavored. So when I plunked a large box of pork bone flavor in the shopping cart, Mom looked back at me with the expression as if to say, "These ones?" To show her this was my last compromise, I began explaining the choice.
豚骨はうまいんだよ。大盛りだけど大味ってわけじゃないし。
I remembered insisting that the noodles I picked were the right kind. In this frozen memory and time, this encapsulated world, I didn't have the power to look around in my surroundings. So, I did what I could and reached out with my hearing and vision, sharpening my senses to find the presence I overlooked. No matter how much I searched through my field of vision, I couldn't see Rena. I rewound the situation, searching, but of course I couldn't find her. Then, was she spying at me from my blind spot? I go through the sound and presences again, looking. I could sense the other customers. They were all mixed about, moving as they please. There was nobody else looking over this way and no one trying to get behind me. Not here. Couldn't be here. Probably wasn't here. I would definitely notice if someone was right behind me, even when I wasn't on my guard. I smiled wryly at the thought of using a vague word like probably right before contradicting it with definitely. Then, I paused my mental replay as a chill ran down my spine. There was definitely a presence like a shadow behind me. That was a terror unlike any other. If a presence really had manifested behind me, I would definitely have turned around to check for it. But the world had moved on, and there was no way for me to turn around. While carrying that frightening shadow on my back, I was gleefully running around the store searching for a case of noodles? Running through the instant noodle section, bad-mouthing my mom. But there was that presence constantly at my back, sticking to me like a shadow. No way to see what it was, realizing it now after the fact that it was horrifying and repulsive. In that moment of time, I was running around gleefully, carrying that cardboard box. Tip-tap. But listening to that moment again, I could hear footsteps other than mine going pit-pat with every step. Tip-tap, tip-tap, tip-tap. Pit-pat, pit-pat, pit-pat. Tip-tap, tip-tap, pit-pat, pit-pat. Tip-tap, tip-tap, pit-pat, pit-pat. While I was running around, the sound of those barefoot footsteps were going pit-pat, were right behind mine. Me running around gleefully in that closed-off moment in time. But I didn't hear it. No, I heard it. That's why I remembered it. I didn't think I had heard anything. That's why I didn't turn around. That is why I didn't turn around. In that moment, the pit-pat of those footsteps were following me the entire time. I couldn't run faster and escape. I couldn't run any faster than I had ran at the time. I couldn't turn around. I hadn't turned around before, not once. Then, I returned to my parents and started talking. The shadow-like presence was right at my back. Since I didn't move, the shadow didn't move. That is why it made no sound. That was all. At the time, I hadn't taken a single step while talking with my parents. I was just standing there. This was undeniable, and yet, I heard it. A pit-pat. That shouldn't be. There was a pit-pat where there should have been no pit-pats. If I took 3 steps, it followed 3 steps. Wasn't that the rule? There was no sound other than that. At the time, the entire world had gone dark. A sudden darkness. It was the end of my reflective journey. I was tired. I wanted to end it. Someone turned on the light, except my body couldn't move. As if I was sewn into that moment in time. Pit-pat. My past self's hair stood on end. That's impossible. Now that's just breaking the rules. I haven't moved. So you shouldn't be moving either. I couldn't move. So you shouldn't be able to move either. Follow the rules. Pit-pat. Yet that sound echoed in the darkness once again. The hair on the back of my neck pricked up on end. It was so close that it was hard to tell whether it was touching the hair or not. Why couldn't I move? Like how the presence was moving behind me. I quickly realized I could move. It's just that I was scared and didn't want to. But now was the only time I could turn around. It was something unforgivable in this moment in time. But I needed to turn around immediately. As if my entire being was trying to force me to stop, it began to administer a pain like a needle being stuck into my every pore. I'll turn around. I will turn around. I'm not scared at all. I will turn around. I'll turn around. I'm not scared at all. A scream I was unable to vocalize. Yeah, I can't. You're on your own with that bitch. I turned around. At first, I couldn't understand the meaning of it. What the fuck is this? Just as a person's mouth might bite into an apple, slurp the juices, and finally discover that it was an apple, my mind began to process the scene before my eyes by eating the apple. Munch munch, chew chew. Slurp the juices and discover the apple. Meaning, what was in front of me was... Oh, you nasty fuck. I can't believe you've done this. Alright, but with that, we are going to call it an episode. Next episode, we will continue and see where this is actually quite haunting. It's terrorizing me to think that someone could be outside your home just looking at you and just trying to get in. Unexpected, uninvited. It fucks with your mind. It fucks with your mind a little bit. Anyway, next episode, we'll see what we're gonna get into, alright? Until then, this has been your boy Karagol Gaming. I'm out of here. Love y'all and deuces.